You ever feel like some of the best RPGs from the PlayStation era just vanished? Like they dropped an amazing game, and then poof, no one ever talked about it again? Well, today we're digging deep into that forgotten vault. Games that didn't get the spotlight back then, but absolutely deserve your attention now. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's shine a light on the RPGs the world slept on. While most RPGs on the PS1 were chasing the shiny new 3D trend, Alundra decided to go against the flow and stick with 2D. That might have seemed risky at the time, but man, it paid off. The sprite work is stunning, detailed, and full of personality, and honestly, it still holds up today. You play as a young guy named Alundra, who washes up in a village cursed by terrifying nightmares. Turns out, he's got the power to enter people's dreams and fight off the twisted creatures hiding inside. And as the town falls deeper into chaos, he becomes their only real hope. But this isn't some cheerful adventure full of one-liners and happy endings. It gets heavy and fast. You're not just watching characters suffer, you're stepping into their pain. Literally. You explore the dreams of people dealing with guilt, fear, and loss. And sometimes you can't even save them. The game doesn't pull punches, and that emotional weight sticks with you long after the credits roll. But this game doesn't just look good, it plays great too. It's got a tight, action-focused combat system, and dungeons that hit that perfect balance between challenging and frustrating. You've got full control during fights. No menus, no turns, just real-time action. You swing your sword, dodge attacks, and time your hits while navigating traps and environmental hazards. It's simple on the surface, but the enemies hit hard, and the boss fights demand patience and quick reflexes. And as you move deeper into the game, you start unlocking all sorts of gear that isn't just for show. You'll find new weapons that hit harder, but the real fun comes from the tools. Stuff like fire wands, magic boots, and bombs don't just help in fights. They open up secret paths and let you solve puzzles in completely new ways. Yeah, people compared it to Zelda back then. And for good reason. But Alundra isn't some lazy clone, it's darker, deeper, and its puzzles hit harder. Even after all these years, it stands tall as one of the best action RPGs of its generation. Back on the original PlayStation, a little gem called Jade Cocoon tried to do something bold. It mixed monster collecting with traditional RPG mechanics, and threw in some seriously beautiful visuals. And honestly, this one's been one of the most requested games in the comments since I started the channel, so it's about time we give it the spotlight it deserves. This game didn't just ride the wave of the Pokémon craze, it built its own world, darker, deeper, and more mature. The character and animation design were handled by Katsuya Kondo, the same artist behind iconic Studio Ghibli films. So yeah, visually the game is stunning. From the hand-drawn cutscenes to the earthy tones of the environments, Jade Cocoon nailed the feeling of being part of a mysterious, magical forest. The combat plays out in a turn-based flow, kind of like a stripped-down version of the active time battle system. You control your main character directly, but the real action comes from the minions you summon. Each one has its own elemental affinity, strengths, and abilities, and managing them mid-fight actually takes some strategy. You can take two monsters and merge them to create a brand new creature that inherits abilities, stats, and even visual traits from both parents. It's not just a cosmetic change. Your fused minions can end up with better resistances, stronger attacks, or completely new skill sets depending on how you combine them. Some end up looking like total freaks in the best way possible, which gives the game a fun layer of experimentation. The main story is solid and offers over 20 hours of gameplay, but what keeps people coming back is what happens after the credits roll. The game unlocks a post-game arena and hunting mode that add a whole new layer of challenge. It turns Jade Cocoon into one of those rare RPGs where the end is actually just the beginning. While most JRPGs from the 90s were trying to go bigger, louder, and more complex, Lunar focused on telling a heartfelt story with charm and simplicity. It followed Alex, a kid from a quiet village who dreamed of becoming a dragon master. What started as a small journey with childhood friends slowly turned into a high-stakes adventure full of emotional twists, ancient legends, and hard choices. The characters didn't feel like stereotypes, they felt like real people, growing with the story and reacting to the world around them. Lunar also had a great sense of humor that made the whole journey feel way more personal. It wasn't afraid to poke fun at itself or throw in a weird joke when you least expected it. The party banter, silly item descriptions, and awkward moments between characters gave the game this playful tone that balanced out the heavier story beats. It made the world feel more lived in, like these were real people with quirks and flaws, not just fantasy heroes on a script. The combat mixed traditional, turn-based mechanics with smart positioning. Every move mattered because your characters had to physically reach their targets on the field, which added a layer of strategy you didn't get in most JRPGs from that time. The game's pacing was tight, as it didn't drown you in endless grinding or pointless side quests. You explored towns with actual personality, talked to NPCs that reacted to your progress, and moved through dungeons that respected your time. But what really gave Lunar its soul were the animated cutscenes. The hand-drawn animated cutscenes, many of them voiced, brought a cinematic flair rarely seen in RPGs back then. Combined with a beautiful soundtrack and memorable writing that turned key moments into something special. And even now, those scenes hit hard.
La 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 la.
Let's be real. Trying to compare Chrono Cross to Chrono Trigger is a losing game from the start. Chrono Trigger is one of those once-in-a-generation masterpieces, and stacking anything against it is like comparing a great local band to the Beatles. It's just not a fair fight. But here's the thing. Just because Chrono Cross doesn't hit the same legendary heights doesn't mean it's not worth your time. In fact, it's a damn impressive game that took some bold swings. It threw out the standard formula and gave us a massive cast of characters, a complex multi-dimensional storyline, and a battle system that still feels unique decades later. The combat system mixes stamina points and an elemental grid system that rewards strategy over brute force. Each character gets a set number of stamina points to use per turn, and you can chain weak, medium, and strong attacks depending on how much stamina you've got. On top of that, every character has a grid where you equip elements, basically magic and special abilities, and the more you use them, the more they shift the battlefield's elemental field. That means the flow of combat constantly changes, and stacking the right elements at the right time can make a huge difference. The game's structure isn't about time travel like its predecessor. Instead, it plays with alternate realities, and every choice creates ripples. You'll see familiar characters in unfamiliar roles, and that constant sense of what if is what drives the entire adventure forward. The soundtrack? Absolutely incredible. Yasunori Mitsuda returned to compose it, and he didn't miss a beat. Visually, Chrono Cross pushed the PlayStation to its limits. The art direction is colorful, the environments are full of personality, and it's one of those games that still holds up surprisingly well if you revisit it today. People love to say it's overrated or not as good as its older brother. But the truth is, Chrono Cross carved out its own identity, and it's one of my favorites of the PS1. If you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, go ahead and hit that like button. It costs nothing, and it makes the algorithm slightly less cruel. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What's one underrated RPG you played on the PlayStation that no one ever talks about? I'm always looking for new suggestions to play and maybe include in future parts of this video. Your comments actually help push the video out to more people and keep the channel alive. Plus, I check every single one of them. And hey, if you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button. It's the easiest commitment you'll ever make. No forms, no credit checks, just vibes. Vanguard Bandits is one of those games that barely made a sound when it launched, but anyone who gave it a shot knows it's something special. It dropped on the PlayStation when tactical RPGs were already starting to find their audience. And even though it didn't have the fame of titles like Final Fantasy Tactics, it brought a lot of personality to the table. This game throws you into giant walking mechs, and that alone sets it apart from most tactical RPGs of its time. Combat takes place on a grid-based map like most tactical RPGs, but what makes Vanguard Bandits stand out is how much it leans into positioning and stamina. Every move you make, like attacking, defending, even turning your mech, costs action points. That means you can't just rush in swinging, you've got to plan each turn carefully or risk leaving yourself wide open. Attacks are also directional, so hitting an enemy from the side or behind deals more damage, and the game rewards smart plays over brute force. The mechs themselves come with different abilities and weapons, and you'll unlock stronger gear as the story progresses. You play as a young man named Bastion, who suddenly finds himself caught up in a full-blown war, and what starts as a simple mission quickly turns into something much bigger, dragging him into a fight between kingdoms, ancient secrets, and a powerful empire that won't stop until it controls everything. The plot hits hard with political intrigue, betrayal, and different story paths depending on your choices, which was pretty bold for the time. The visuals weren't mind-blowing, even for the PlayStation, but the charm of the anime-style character portraits and the detailed mech designs made up for it. Plus, the English voice acting has that classic, cheesy PS1 vibe, but honestly, it just adds to the nostalgia. If you're into tactical RPGs and want something with mechs, branching storylines, and a combat system that makes you think before every move, Vanguard Bandits is a hidden gem that deserves a spot in any collection.
Devil punch!
Back when Sony was still figuring out how to stand out in the RPG scene, they dropped a wild card near the end of the PS1 era. A full-blown original game called The Legend of Dragoon. It wasn't a sequel, it wasn't based on a manga or anime. It was just Sony swinging for the fences, and honestly, they almost hit a home run. The story kicks off with Dart, a warrior on a mission to avenge his destroyed hometown. But things escalate fast when he gets caught up in a massive war that pulls in ancient dragons, forgotten kingdoms, and a mysterious power known as the Dragoon Spirit. The environments looked great, the battle animations were flashy, and those CG cutscenes went toe-to-toe with anything you'd seen in Final Fantasy VIII or IX. Even if the gameplay wasn't revolutionary, the production value was off the charts for the time. It had a big cast, a story that wasn't afraid to go dark, and a unique combat system based on timed button presses that made each battle feel more hands-on. Also, during battle, characters could tap into powerful armor and magic abilities, complete with transformation sequences that looked incredible for the time. And every time you activated it, it felt like a mini-event. This system added layers to combat strategy, especially since each character's Dragoon form came with its own strengths, spells, and rhythm-based attacks. The upgrade system was pretty straightforward but still satisfying. Instead of throwing skill trees or complicated crafting at you, the game focused on additions. Special combo attacks you level up just by using them over and over. The timing got trickier as they leveled, but landing them felt great and the payoff was real. Weapons and gear could be found or bought, with some rare items giving solid boosts, if you explored enough. And every time you used the Dragoon form in battle, that power grew too, unlocking stronger spells and making your transformations even more effective. Some people think it tried too hard to chase Final Fantasy, but the truth is it carved out its own identity.
Wing Blaster!
Dragon Valor is one of those games that showed up late in the PlayStation's life and barely got noticed, but it actually had some bold ideas for its time. It mixes side-scrolling hack-and-slash gameplay with a touch of RPG elements, and the result is something pretty unique. You don't just follow a single character through the whole story. Instead, the game takes place across generations, with your actions and choices shaping the path of your descendants. It's a bit like playing a family saga, where your choices between stages decide which descendant you'll control next and what kind of journey they'll face. The combat is fast-paced and simple at first as you don't get skill trees or complicated menus, but as you progress, your character picks up stronger weapons, learns new magic, and gets stat boosts that actually make a difference in combat. The cool part is that some of these upgrades are tied to how well you play and the choices you make, which can even affect what kind of powers your descendants will inherit. It's a clean and simple setup, but it adds just enough depth to keep you pushing forward. There's also a light branching path system that adds replay value. Depending on the decisions you make, you'll face different enemies, meet new characters, and even end up with completely different story outcomes. Visually, it's clear that Dragon Valor was pushing the limits of the hardware. The 3D environments are solid for the time, and the cutscenes, while dated, do a decent job of telling a story that spans multiple lives. And the soundtrack doesn't steal the show, but it fits the medieval vibe well enough. It never reached the same popularity as other Namco titles, but there's something special about it. If you're into action RPGs with a bit of narrative ambition and don't mind the old-school graphics, it's definitely worth a shot. Thousand Arms didn't follow the usual playbook. While most games were focused on saving the world or grinding endless battles, this one brought something totally unexpected to the table: dating mechanics. Yeah, real relationship building that actually affected your gameplay. You could flirt, charm, and go on dates with several female party members and even NPCs. And depending on how well you did, your weapons would get stronger with new powers and abilities. The story kicks off with a young spirit blacksmith, a cocky goofball who somehow ends up being humanity's last hope. He's on a quest to find sacred flames and stop an evil cult from resurrecting an ancient force of destruction. Yeah, it's got that classic save the world setup, but the game never plays it straight. The plot is packed with silly moments, flirty banter, and wild characters that feel more like a sitcom cast than a band of heroes. And instead of controlling a full team all at once, only your main character could actually attack. The rest of the party filled support roles with automatic actions like healing, buffing, or even just shouting encouragement. You couldn't swap them mid-battle, so choosing the right setup beforehand made a big difference. The anime-inspired visuals and over-the-top humor gave it a unique charm that made it stand out instantly. The characters were loud, expressive, and full of attitude, like they'd walked straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon. And the cutscenes leaned hard into that exaggerated style, with dramatic poses, goofy reactions, and voice acting that didn't hold back. Everything about the presentation screamed personality, from the colorful menus to the flashy date sequences. It didn't take itself too seriously, and that gave the whole game a light, fun energy that made it easy to keep playing, even when the mechanics showed their age. Most RPGs on the PS1 were all about saving the world or hunting some ancient evil, but as your dreams went in a totally different direction. Instead of throwing you into some epic war, it drops you into a weird mix of monster collecting, dating sim, and dungeon crawling. And somehow, it pulls it off. You play as a young guy climbing a giant magical tower, trying to uncover what really happened to your dad, who vanished years ago in the same place. Inside the tower, things get tricky, as it resets every time you enter, wiping your map and forcing you to adapt on the fly. You're limited in what gear you can bring, and death means starting from scratch. But there's also a cool system where you collect monster eggs, hatch them, and train your own little army to help you survive longer and go deeper. Combat in the tower happens on a simple grid, but there's more strategy going on than it seems at first. Every move you make counts because enemies move right after you. You fight alongside your monster partner, but you don't have full control over them. They act based on their behavior type. So choosing the right monster for your style really matters. Some can heal, others hit from a distance, and a few are just tanks that keep enemies off you. And managing both your moves and your monster's actions adds this cool layer of chaos that keeps things tense without getting frustrating. It's not the deepest system ever made, but it's way more engaging than it looks. But the real magic isn't just in the tower, it's in what you do outside of it. Back in town, you're fixing up buildings, talking to locals, and even flirting with girls who react differently depending on how you treat them. Yeah, it's part RPG, part small-town life simulator. Azure Dreams didn't try to copy the big names of the time. It took risks, blended genres, and carved out its own space. The Grandstream Saga is one of those games that feels like a quiet experiment hidden in plain sight. It didn't chase trends or try to copy what other RPGs were doing. Instead, it carved out its own space with a mix of bold choices and simple execution. One of the first fully 3D action RPGs on the PlayStation 1. It ditched traditional character sprites for polygonal models without facial features. That might sound like a downgrade, but it gave the game a strange, almost dreamlike identity that stood out immediately. And despite those blank faces, it still delivered emotional moments using detailed portraits, strong writing, and clever camera work. The game even throws in a few animated cutscenes in full anime style during major story beats. They're short but impactful, giving key moments more emotional weight. You play as Eon, a warrior caught in the aftermath of a global catastrophe. The world has been shattered into floating continents, each barely held together by ancient magic. His mission seems straightforward at first: protect the sacred crystals and restore balance. But things spiral quickly into betrayal, political struggle, and a quiet sense of dread. The gameplay is simple but sharp, and combat happens in real time, with one-on-one battles that feel like duels. You dodge, block, and strike while keeping an eye on enemy patterns. It's not about flashy combos, it's about timing and control. The upgrade system follows that same mindset, as you won't be drowning in loot or customizing builds. New weapons and armor show up at key moments, automatically replacing the old gear. And even with its limitations, the game found smart ways to make its world feel alive. From the clean interface, choices that can shape how the story ends, minimalist world design, to the emotional beats hidden in simple dialogue, it proves that you don't always need big budgets or fancy effects to tell a good story. Hey guys, this is the second part of my series on underrated games on the PlayStation. And part 1 is showing up on your screen right now. So if you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. Don't forget to drop a comment on both videos to help me out. And of course, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more.